to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. With the beginning of the new millennium, many institutions and individuals took the opportunity to assess where they were and where they were going. In Westchester County, the Department of Planning was asked to take a broad view of growth in our area and develop statistics and projections to help the county and local governments understand the demographic, geographic, and economic trends that are likely to affect their municipalities over the next 20 years. The resulting report, called Megatrends, has been prepared by the Westchester County Department of Planning under the direction of Commissioner Joyce Lannert, who is here with us tonight to discuss its findings and recommendations. I'd like to welcome Commissioner Lannert. Thank you for joining us. Joyce, why was this an opportune time to look backward and forward in an effort to define the county's issues?
Well, what we had wanted to do was really present a picture for the county executive of certain areas that we thought perhaps we hadn't looked at the implications of as much as we needed to. And those three areas were the demographics and the changes we anticipated, housing, and what the housing crisis was doing to the county, to future growth and economic growth of the county, and then transportation, because they're all interrelated and they all have a bearing on the economic health and well-being of the county. So those were the three areas we focused on in here.
Mm-hmm. And how was your report compiled?
We basically pulled together as many of the statistics existing, and then we got a hold of projections with regard to population. We had the 1990 census, so we're waiting to update it with the 2000. But there are projections made with that through New York State Transportation Department, NIMTIC, part of one of the subdivisions of Department of Transportation. We had information about housing and change in housing prices from realtors, and we tracked that through a multi-county business. And then we also knew what was going on in terms of transportation throughout the region, and we looked more broadly than we usually look in Westchester County to outside, to the influence of the Stewart Airport, which is growing in business, to what's happening on the Jersey Shore or not happening, and over to Connecticut. So we really took a much broader picture this time than we did before.
Mm-hmm. But without the most recent census statistics, you actually have projections based on the last 10 years, or how?
Yes,
mm-hmm.
That's the formula they do. But we see we're off, because we projected a 6% growth in the next 20 years. And this census has showed us that we've already grown that 6% since 1990 and 2000. So it'll be interesting to see in what other ways we underestimated as well.
Mm-hmm. So what would be the next step? Are you going to be looking then at the census and revising this initial report?
Unfortunately, the census doesn't give us details until approximately a year from now. We have broad numbers. We have numbers by race. We do not have by age or by income. So we can't do those fine line statistics that were able to show us differences between North and South County, for example, with educational attainment and income. We won't have that data for another year or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's take a look at the population profile as you did develop it based on the previous statistics. Can you tell us a little bit about who we are and what we're likely to be?
Well, we're getting older, and
I know that.
Yeah, we all know that.
Somehow I see that all the time.
We expected the aging population to grow by 30% in the next 20 years. We may be closer to that, we're not sure. But then there's a funny bulge because the youth population is growing based primarily on immigration, families, and the fact that some of the groups immigrating tend to have larger family size. So we're going to have a bigger number of children and youth as we go on, and then a larger elderly population. But the middle areas, we don't expect to anticipate a great growth area in that.
Mm-hmm.
We have already grown about the size of the city of White Plains. We've added that 50,000 number that we expected to add in 20 years. We've already added that in 10.
In 10 years, uh-huh.
Right.
Now, how about in terms of the geographic distribution?
More in the south, and that we did expect. The northern counties have slowed down in their rate of growth, and they're not really welcoming more growth. The watershed, the implications of protecting the drinking water source and the 40% of land mass that comprises the New York City watershed has had a lot to do with slowing growth in the north. We are seeing a major growth in the cities, in the the 4 cities in the south. And a lot of that growth, again, is immigrant population and primarily Hispanic. New Rochelle is 100% increase in Hispanic population, and Yonkers is 68 or something close to that. So we're seeing city growth, and we're seeing it largely through immigration.
Mm-hmm. In the report, it also pointed to certain educational and income disparities.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
We were just surprised. We were just surprised that there really was a difference. I think it was 62% in the north that had college educations. I'm not sure where that is, and we find that in fact it's less in the south. Don't know where we have that exactly. I can come back to that.
Uh-huh.
We were just surprised that across the board there were differences between the north, central, and south part of the county. Educational attainment, how many had, what percentage had college degrees, and then also the median incomes. So that we felt was a telling difference that really needed to be addressed in a particular way.
Mm-hmm. Now, what implications do these trends have for government and social services in the county?
Well, several. We looked at housing also, and we saw that the housing costs were rising so in Westchester County. And with that, we also saw that people were commuting from farther and farther away, which has tremendous implications to us in terms of, first of all, they're building wider roadways to accommodate the populations coming in. The fact that they may need to build a new Tappan Zee Bridge to accommodate traffic coming across to come into Westchester. But then you have these income and educational disparities where you have the bulk of the population that does the service jobs, the mid-range jobs, not the $140,000 a year managerial job. These people are living increasingly south of 287, but needed to work north of 287. So how do we get them from here to there? And even our school districts, the range of where their teachers are being drawn from is very, very big now. It's large.
Mm-hmm.
And more of our workers are coming even from Brooklyn and Queens, which has an implication on the other day when the county shut its bus service for 2 days.
Sure.
White Plains Hospital was in a pickle because they came up by train, but the buses weren't running.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do when you're dependent on a workforce that in itself is not mobile?
Uh-huh.
And so we have to look at those implications as well.
Right. Now, in terms of educational institutions, I assume that some of these statistics will be used to project the need for additional schools. Or
Right. Most particularly, I think, the county executive has already begun with working with Westchester Community College. I just attended this morning an opening of a second satellite branch in Ossining, and this will be a magnet school for health and health-related services. And they will be opening in Yonkers and in Mount Vernon within the next year and 2 years. And this is specifically to address this. We have people in the city populations who don't have cars, who can't get to the Valhalla campus, and need to have their skills upgraded. So they go from minimum wage to a living wage. And this is where the county executive specifically worked on extending higher education to these groups, and it will make a terrific difference. Really.
Mm-hmm. And how about at the lower school levels? Do you feel that these statistics will be used to plan for increases in school budgets and things of that sort?
I think what it happens is that it shifts. More schools are taking into account bringing on social workers as well as additional teachers to ease the transition of new families into families from different cultures into our school system, because it has issues about volunteerism, about attending PTA, about doing sorts of things that may not be part of their own culture, about drawing them in so that they can have a voice. Mm-hmm. And just anecdotally, we know, because the county doesn't work directly with school districts per se,
right.
But we know that they're responding in this way in terms of trying to bring in these communities and groups in, as full membership in their school systems.
Uh-huh. I assume that this will also have some effect on the welfare system. Is that something that you get involved with at all?
In this case, we are just sort of the harbingers of news. I won't say good news or bad
right.
news, just news. It makes some difference to the welfare system. For us, it's a crush on the additional requests for housing and assisted housing that our numbers are set by Washington. And this is again where the issue of adjusted versus unadjusted numbers became
right.
such a very politically charged.
Mm-hmm.
If we have an undercount, then all of our funding sources are reduced. Our housing subsidies don't reflect true need, et cetera. So
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of these things are not something that as a planning department we would work directly with, but we work with all the other departments in helping to give them the information they need to plan.
Right, right. There was another aspect, the increase in the aging population.
That's right.
Tell us about the issues that will face this group as time goes on.
Yeah. We expect this senior population to grow, and there are a couple of things that will make a difference for. For one thing, we have assistance in terms of federal programs that give housing and housing vouchers to elderly people. The problem is we found in the 1990 census, and since we don't have the breakdown now, that 80% of the people living alone were women, and 26% of the population overall lived alone. So we have service needs for these populations. We don't have enough assisted living units that can be afforded by them. And even in the assisted housing that we do have, it comes as housing with no services attached. So if you have a Section 8 elderly project, just provides housing. The people in those projects are getting older at the point where they're getting frailer, and we'll now have to lobby and work with HUD to provide services in our own assisted living as well.
Mm-hmm.
But we also rely an awful lot on the private sector, and in that respect, there's a huge mismatch between the average cost of independent living, but within this kind of a setting, $3,500 a month in general, mm-hmm. which requires an income of about $50,000. And a lot of our citizens just don't have that, only about a quarter have. So we're really going to be facing a crunch then in terms of a housing shortage for seniors.
Right, and I know that our agency had been looking into moderate-priced assisted living, and that it's almost impossible given the cost of the real estate and housing
Yes.
today. So this is something that will require certainly a larger
mm-hmm.
project to help work it out.
That's right.
Have you been making recommendations regarding this to other departments? Is your report being used to recommend services?
Well, the county executive had all the commissioners come in. After we presented to him, he had all the commissioners come in and see the Megatrends presentation. what he has also done in the meantime is create actually a department of the aging, which it's not called, it's for senior services and policy, I think it's called. So he's elevated what had been just a
The office.
the office of now as a full department with moving May Carpenter up to commissioner. So he's putting more attention on how to draw that together. And they work with the section of my office called, which does the housing and community development part. And we work very well together, that and social services, in terms of what are the implications of the numbers and what should they be doing and where are the pockets and where do we really need to provide services.
In your report, you mentioned that there was going to be a need to facilitate an urban strategy.
Yeah.
What was meant by that? And
Well, because we saw the changes particularly affecting the cities. So the county executive is in much more, how do you say, provided much more outreach to the cities in terms of trying to work with them in doing these things. For example, the urban consortium that deals with the community development block grants that we have doesn't deal with the cities. They have their own entitlements. And so he needn't have made this outreach, but he is working with the mayor specifically in trying to facilitate housing for the elderly and for lower income. He's worked in terms of getting the community college sited in Yonkers at the Cross County Center and at a place that isn't yet determined in Mount Vernon. We're working with the city there. So that we have more of a departmental cross. He will actually have city departments work with various county departments and working on projects that are a benefit to the city and getting the county much more directly involved in helping and working with the city in that respect.
When you put that system in place, how do you expect that that there will be a benefit to the issues of the aging and the workforce and things like that? How do you see it actually playing itself out?
Right. Probably more in terms of better coordination. Some of the cities are cash-strapped. They're older centers, their infrastructure is failing. For example, the county also worked, it's not directly related to those issues, but in terms of where the county picked up and helped the cities in terms of the inflow and infiltration problems with aging sewer systems. The county is helping in underwriting the costs of providing repairs to these systems. We are working more to get transmodal centers that will bring together bus, train transportation, shuttle services, and working directly. We've done that in New Rochelle. We'll be doing it more in Mount Vernon, looking at how you get these workers from mass transit to areas of employment. We've worked directly in buying, we now have what's called a New Homes Land Acquisition Fund, where we can actually buy the land so that a not-for-profit can come in and build the housing. Because as you said, it's the land in Westchester that's so expensive. So we've put aside monies in this account that will make that possible to do that.
So there are certain strategies that are being
right.
put into place that hopefully will alleviate some of these
Right.
issues. You also had pointed to the need for strategic alliances, and I'd like to hear who those alliances are intended to be with and what the goals might be.
Well, in some cases, a large number of them, for example, are with the environmental community that work with us so that we can get some of the improvements and the maintenance of our environmental quality in place. And other areas more on the social service side, we're working now with United Way in terms of the housing. We have worked with the League of Women Voters as well, and they prepared with us a video on housing, but now United Way is coming in a much bigger effort so that they can outreach to corporations and bring them in on the need for affordable homes. Andy himself is working much more directly with the business community on projects such as trying to bring in, increase the biotech industry in the county, which is I think Westchester County is first place in the state on biotech, which I hadn't realized. Working to maintain the light manufacturing industry, which provides mid-level jobs for a lot of people, using the IDA to do that, keep people in place and keep jobs in place.
So, in a sense, this is trying to create coalitions so that we can keep the jobs here, keep the people here.
Absolutely.
But again, that will probably require some retraining, some moving around of population too.
Right.
I know we have an issue with our home health services that we have needs in Upper Westchester, but the transportation is very difficult for aides to go serve clients in that area.
That's
so we're hoping that some of these alliances and some of these strategies will improve that.
Right.
How does you mentioned it a little bit, the increasingly stressed transportation routes, how is this affecting currently our ability to attract workers and to hold employees?
That's a very sticky issue. As I mentioned, the largest increase in number of workers is coming from Brooklyn, Queens. It amazed us. What it tells us as a county is that where we didn't think we had an interest in whether or not Long Island Railroad has access to Grand Central Station, not our business, or whether the Metro-North Railway can come straight down into Penn Station, we didn't think we're finding that we're all interconnected. Even the 2nd Avenue subway, that can facilitate workers coming up from these areas and make the connections with the Harlem and the Danbury and the Hudson lines at 125th Street. So we're finding that we're getting much more involved in these so-called outside projects. Beyond that, when we talk about if we get them to a railway place, which is what you mentioned about getting your service workers, we need the next connector, and that's very expensive. The shuttle buses, the other ways to get people from the transportation centers. And partly we're stuck because so far these transportation shuttle services has been funded on a 3-year pilot basis. And what do you do when the pilot money runs out?
Right.
That's a negotiation, again, we have to have with the federal agencies to make sure that these can be undertaken. Europe spends much more money on public transportation. They just accept that it's better to do that and not have the air degradation that comes from everybody commuting by car. And we haven't bought into that yet, but we may have to.
Right, right. Well,
Right.
certainly on our roads, we
Exactly.
certainly don't think people have bought into this.
Right.
If we could just start summing up, how do you see the projections and recommendations from your report being implemented by other parts of the county?
We're having the hardest nub with the housing. That is basically market housing. They're responding to the fact that there's a lot of money and people want bigger houses and are building the starter castles and the McMansions and so on. And the market is not responding to a vast demand at the lower end. And that's partly related also to the cost of land. So that has been the hardest nut to crack in that respect. We have this fund that we can help buy land. It's not going to be enough. What we're hoping to do now is to encourage growth through IDA, through whatever incentives we can offer to more growth where the infrastructure exists, so that we probably would have expansion within city structures. Then we have to work on the transportation.
Right.
But the housing has been the hardest one to deal with in that respect. We feel we're attacking the other ones, the education particularly, the job growth through retraining and directly inducing businesses to locate here. The Office of Economic Development is doing that much more aggressively under county executive. We're having a hard time with the housing. Yeah.
Okay. And we just have a couple more minutes, but what implications do you see for human service organizations like WJCS in terms of these kinds of projections?
Well, I think you mentioned it yourself. There is this increasingly elderly population that if the question is, since they don't have alternatives in terms of housing, how do you bring the care home to them? How do you facilitate getting the care workers directly to their homes? And then the whole other issue, if we're not talking about the elderly, is just how do you bring in these vast numbers of new immigrants to the country? We don't have the settlement houses anymore, where somebody took them in and basically told them this is America and this is how it works. And we have vast cultural differences, not only linguistic. And we're going to have to, I mean, for a service agency, some way of outreaching to populations to sort of give them the lay of the land and how to start integrating into the American system would be very helpful, and pointing them to what services are available to them.
And I know, as we'll be talking in the next segment, a lot of work is being done in the schools too, because it's not only the acculturation of families, it's the acculturation of the children and these youth, the increased number of youth, many of whom are stressed by economic and language difficulties. Well, Joyce, it's really been fascinating talking to you. What do you see the next step being with the Megatrends report?
Well, the first thing we want to do is to check where we were on target or not. As we see, we've already had more of a population growth than we anticipated, and then do a recheck in terms of, as the additional numbers come in, how we adjust our policies, whether we have to do more in terms of the job generation, but the transportation and the housing, we know we still have to do the most work in.
So we'll look forward to Megatrends 2.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
I hope you'll come back and update us again.
Thank you very much
I
for
want
the
to
opportunity
thank
to
you,
explain.
Joyce Lannert, for letting us know about Megatrends, and I hope you'll stay tuned. In the second half of our program, we'll be talking with WJCS staff members who will be affected by the Megatrends issues and how we plan in our agency to be coping as the years go on. Thank you. Welcome back to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. Tonight we have been discussing a recent Westchester County Department of Planning report called Megatrends, which was designed to help our officials and our institutions plan for and address the needs of our county's citizens as the 21st century unfolds. In our first segment, Commissioner of Planning Joyce Lannert helped us understand several key elements of the report relating to the changing composition of our population, the impact of an increasingly elderly and frail population, and the stresses on available housing and transportation. We also heard about some of the recommendations that might help the county better serve its constituents and how social service organizations and government agencies may work together to develop solutions. In this half, we will talk with 3 members of the WJCS staff whose services will likely be most affected by the demographic and economic realities that Commissioner Lannert's report suggests. I'd like to welcome Linda Breton, who is Assistant Executive Director in charge of our mental health services. Welcome, Linda.
Thanks, Dale.
Dr. Jeff Apotheker, who is our Director of Geriatric Services. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
And Robin Trotter, who is Director of Human Resources. Welcome, Robin.
Nice to be here.
Linda, before we start talking about what we may change, maybe you could just give us an overview of what the mental health services are that WJCS offers.
Okay, I'm going to give you the thumbnail sketch because we could go on for a long time
Right.
about that. We really offer a wide array of both clinic-based and community-based services for people of all ages who either live or work in Westchester County. So that could include a very traditional kind of outpatient mental health clinic where you would get counseling services, psychology services, whole array of things, to school-based mental health services for kids, after-school programs, in-home parenting skills development programs, as well as services for the elderly population, which Jeff's going to talk more about later, I think. So it's a full menu of services, really.
Right. Well, Joyce was talking about the likelihood that we will have a more diverse, more elderly, more immigrant population. And I think we've already been seeing that. Obviously, she was saying that some of the statistics are 10 years old. How have our programs already been adapting to adjust to these changing realities?
Well, in a variety of ways, and I think I agree with you. We really have seen the changes, particularly over the last, say, 5 years, with an increasing number of families from other places utilizing our services. And I think what that's meant is, first of all, recruiting different staff. People who speak Spanish, for example, and we have now in a number of our programs bilingual staff, and a couple of our clinics located in the southern part of the county, and Commissioner Lannert talked about much of the density of immigration population being in the southern part. We have bilingual psychiatrists in some of our clinics, so that's certainly one of the first ways. We've also done a lot to train staff who are not bilingual or bicultural to really be more aware of differences and how we need to perhaps approach what we do in different ways. So those are some of the strategies that we've already started to put in place.
Now, obviously, there are also some issues because we have more youth in those particular communities as well. What impact has that had for our services?
Well, for one, we've developed a lot more youth-serving programs and in a variety of settings. So that what it's meant is that we've put services into the schools. We have services in Yonkers Elementary School, in the Yonkers Alternative High School, in a school in Mount Vernon, 2 schools in Mount Vernon, after-school programming, which was really a new area for us, actually, to get into doing after-school programming. But after-school programming that was holistic in its outlook. And actually, I would say that about all of our youth-serving programs, that increasingly we've taken a much broader look and broader approach to what we do, so that we're looking at the youngsters, their families, the community in which they live, and thinking about what we have to do to make an impact on the things that affect their lives.
So this is not, certainly it's non-traditional in terms of clinical mental health services.
Absolutely.
And there's been a big shift in delivering services in that way, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, one of the programs, one of the continually growing programs that we have, which is very non-traditional at Family Matters, is a mobile clinical and case management program where we have staff who are meeting with children and their families in their homes, at McDonald's, in the school, wherever they need to go to connect with these families and with the youngsters to begin the process of working on the issues that families identify as being important to them. That's another shift, I think, that we increasingly view the way we work as a real partnership with families. And if we're working with families who are coming from other places, we need to, again, understand what's important to them, what do they value, and start there as a way of making a relationship and starting the helping process.
Okay. There were a couple of other terms that we had discussed when we spoke together. You had talked about integrated service planning. And when she was talking about strategic alliances, I was thinking along those lines. Could you talk about how that plays out in mental health?
Sure,
area?
because that really is a county initiative, and actually when she talks about, you know, when Commissioner talked about strategic alliances and really needing to have a lot of people at the table to be able to address the issues that have been identified in megatrends and other issues we've identified. So the Integrated Services Planning Initiative means that a community-based group, and I'll give you an example. Say in New Rochelle, we have services, several different kinds of services in New Rochelle, and we participate in something called the Village Team, which is a grassroots, community-based collaboration of organizations, mental health providers, the schools, the local hospital, churches, libraries, you name it. Anything that is offering something to families in New Rochelle sits at that table, and we think about how to put our resources together to make the most effective use of them, and to not duplicate services, to identify gaps and go after resources to fill those gaps. That's what integrated services planning is about. And it's being done at every level in the county. It's being done at the county level, all the way down to the grassroots community level.
So it seems like a much more streamlined and more effective, hopefully, way.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Okay. I'd like to shift away from the children and youth and families to one of the issues she had spoken about, which I think is certainly going to have a great impact upon us, and that's the increasing aging population. Jeff, what kind of services are we already providing, and how do you see some of the aspects that Joyce was talking about affecting us for the future?
Well, we offer a variety of services for older individuals living in Westchester County. The traditional mental health services, such as clinical services, mental health services. We offer continuing day treatment program services for individuals that have had long-standing issues with mental illness. We also offer case management services to the elderly. So we help an individual, for example, go after certain entitlements and help fill out applications for them. We also have a number of social clubs, which really have a range of aged individuals in there, but we offer a number of recreation and social services through those clubs. We also have a geriatric outreach service, and this is a special mental health team that will go out into the community to serve older individuals who are too frail to come into a service site. We also have a program called Share Care, which is a special case management service that assists a family deal with the needs of the individual, the aged individual, to help them remain at home and age in place.
So some of these programs will certainly, as we look to a future with increasingly older adults, I could certainly see where families may require the share care services. We didn't yet mention connections, but some of the aspects, where do you see us needing to expand some of those services for people who are more home-based, more frail?
Well, I think Linda touched on the two areas. One is that we need to hire clinicians and service providers with more diverse background in order to serve the populations that we have in the county, and as well as more services. The proportion of older individuals in Westchester County is exceeding the national increases, and there's just more individuals to serve who are older. And it's going to be critical to, one, have the number of individuals, service providers available, as well as with the right backgrounds to do that.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the Connections program, because I think something like Connections is almost a prototype for the future of how we might serve people, given less, maybe limited resources, but more people out in the community.
Absolutely. There's, I mean, with the older population, there's oftentimes more chronic illness, physical illness, and adjustment issues. And so not only Connections, but also talk a little bit about Self-Help Clearinghouse, which actually helps train leaders to initiate support groups in the county. But definitely those services are going to be even more critical for individuals that are remaining in the community, and if there's transportation problems in terms of trying to get services up to the northern part of the county, having a program like Connections, which is essentially a telephonic support group, a conference call among 6 or 8 individuals sharing common needs, is going to be a very effective way to deliver support services.
Mm-hmm. And I could almost imagine that we may move to do that by computer as well in the future, if we can do computer conferencing, things of that sort.
That's right.
We also, I guess, our home health services, too, are an area where this may certainly be an expanded need. How do you see this playing out in terms of the future?
You know, again, I think there's a real upside to the immigration trend that Commissioner Leonard described, because oftentimes folks that are immigrating usually start off in service type jobs such as home health care. There's going to be a tremendous need for home health care. I think just recently in the news, talking about just nursing homes having a very difficult time not only getting staff, but getting the funding to get the appropriate care ratios established. So I think, you know, recruiting individuals is going to be a challenge, but needs to be done. And again, recruiting individuals that have the backgrounds of the folks that you're servicing is going to be a task also. It's going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm. So we can anticipate that there'll be a need to expand home health services, but a lot will be dependent upon where we can find workers.
Yeah, there's a big bubble there. I mean, it's just not the baby boomers aging, but it's also the longevity factor as well, which is you know, compounding the bulge there. We're kind of an elder drive here in terms of the numbers.
Right, right. Well, and that's not the only area in which we're having difficulty attracting employees. Maybe we can shift a little. We had talked with Joyce about housing and transportation, but obviously one of the major impacts of lack of affordable housing in our county and the difficulty of transportation is our ability to get workers here. And Robin, maybe as our human resources expert, you could address what has been happening in the social service areas in terms of the ability to bring people in.
Well, primarily it seems that the pool is dried. I don't want to say completely dried up, but it is much smaller than it used to be, particularly in terms of the clinicians. There is such a great need out in the community, and there are just not enough trained people to meet the needs of the community. We have taken efforts internally through new recruiting techniques, new to the agency. Just within the past year, we did a job fair for the first time. Now, I know it's not new to a lot of other businesses, but it was new to WJCS. And we had some good response to that, so we are now pursuing other job fairs at different colleges. We are building relationships with a lot of different colleges who have social work programs so that we can let them know of what openings we have. We have more and more internships that we're exploring. And I am personally a great fan of growing our own. If we can't find it out there, let's grow our own. So I think through internships and through in-house training, more and more we will be giving our current staff or incoming staff more training to meet the particular needs in geriatrics or in early childhood education and everything in between. Recently we just started, as you know, our WJCS website, and we do post our job openings on that. We're doing some internet recruiting as well, which has been, we've received a tremendous response to it.
Really? Oh, that's
yeah,
great.
it's worked out very, very well, which is exciting. Again, it's a new avenue for us. So these are some of the new things we're trying. Traditional advertising isn't working, so we have to look at what alternatives there are.
Right. Linda, how is that playing out in your division in terms of trying to, we have had expansion in our programs, but yet the jobs are more difficult.
Definitely.
How are you coping with the need to find appropriate workers?
See this gray hair? No.
We don't see any gray hair. We make it red when we...
I think we look, just as we do with families or youngsters, we look at the whole picture. It's not just the narrow job, but we look at what our staff needs from us and by way of support, a certain kind of environment within WJCS that helps to sustain them. We have a wonderful resource in our Educational Institute, which provides ongoing in-service training for all kinds of staff at different levels. And I think in this day and age, that's quite rare for an agency like ours to have that kind of in-house resource. People can even get continuing education credits as part of the requirement to keep their professional credentials up. So that's one thing that we're able to offer staff, which is a support and which attracts them to an organization like ours, so that if they have 4 job choices, WJCS has value added in that way. And also, I think organizationally, we try to do things to invite input from staff, again, at every level of the agency. And we have staff who are wonderful, smart people who have great ideas for how to not only make their own jobs better, but how to make the organization better. And I think that's important to helping people stay with us for a long period of time.
I don't think we have a problem with retention as much as we give in today's market. There's also increased competition out in the market for the same entry-level people, certainly in service workers. Are you finding that in your area? Are you finding that, Robin?
Well, there's a great need for specialists in geriatric services, and I think one way that the agency will be responding in the future, not only through our Educational Institute, but also through all the field placements and internships that we offer students, that we'll try to construct certain experiences for them so that they will come out with a stronger background, say for example in geriatric services. And I think that's one direction that we'll move into.
Okay. Robin, can you give us a little idea of what the range of jobs are that people might find at WJCS?
It's kind of wide open.
Okay.
Certainly we have entry-level positions in terms of secretarial positions, all the way up to psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, nursing staff, direct care providers for our community residential programs. So we carry openings currently, everything from clerical support staff, office administrative staff, to licensed clinicians. I have to agree with you, certainly, when you say that retention is not the problem. I think once people get into WJCS, they say, wow, what a great place to work and live. And it is. We work very hard to maintain a very strong family value atmosphere in the agency. And what we need to do when we recruit is to sell that idea and make people realize that there's a great deal of importance and pride in working for an organization that allows you to express your creativity and allows you to share in the ideas and programs that come out of an agency such as ours. A lot of companies don't allow that, and we're fortunate that we try to tap into those resources, and we've been successful with it.
Yeah, well, certainly it's obvious we have people who have stayed with us for 25, 30 years. So obviously we're doing something right in terms of that. I think maybe in addition to the general range, people may not be aware that we also have opportunities for early childhood specialists, learning specialists. Maybe you could elaborate on some of the specialties that are not necessarily social service.
You're absolutely right, because we do serve people actually from birth on up through all of the life cycle changes. We do need people who can provide those services. We recently have opened a family center, a daycare center down in Yonkers to serve the population there. So we need the caregivers. We need people who can help the infants, watch over them, help guide them as they grow and develop. We have actually, just a little segue, we have a program in Yonkers that's associated with our daycare center that takes mothers who are on public assistance and gives them training so that they can get their GEDs, and then we also provide training to help them get jobs. We have a job coach in that program that will go find them jobs and give them the skills they need to maintain that job. So not only do we have positions available for people in early childhood education or in tutoring kinds of positions, but we're helping the population, perhaps the more unskilled people of the county, develop skills so they can become productive citizens, which is what they want to do. I mentioned tutors. We do have a learning center that provides different kinds of tutoring needs, or fulfills the tutoring needs to a wide population across the county. And certainly we are looking for tutors who know how to work with children, can help identify and assess what their particular needs are, and are able to meet those needs and give them, as well as their parents, the support and the guidance they need.
So really, if anyone has any kinds of skills, they could probably find some opportunity to work with.
Absolutely, and even those who don't think they have a skill, perhaps they just have a desire or a compassion. We've mentioned the home health services and the geriatric individuals. We have home health needs all the time, and we have an excellent training program for home health aides where it doesn't cost an individual anything other than some time to come in and be trained on all of the skills that they need to take care of somebody in their home, on bathing and cooking and dressing and how to address people, how to talk with them, how to care for them. It's roughly a 70-hour program, and they receive a certificate at the end of that where they can get a job, hopefully with us. But they're not tied to that, but that's obviously our goal. But again, it's taking a population that may not have skills, giving them the training they need so that they can go out and earn their own living and help meet the needs of other people in the county.
Right. Okay. Well, how would you prefer people to get in touch with you if they are interested in some of the opportunities?
Well, if I had my own operator, I'd say call me. But we do have our website, WJCS.com, where people can access that to see what job openings we currently have. My email is on that. You can email me at rtrotter@WJCS.com. I'll even let you fax me. My fax number is 421-9066. I believe so.
Okay.
Or you can call our headquarters at 761-0600, and I'm sure anybody in Human Resources will be happy to help you.
Okay. All right. Well, we have one more minute. Are there any other aspects that you feel are very important in terms of the megatrends and how we will be responding to that?
I guess what I would say is that we need to, and it's kind of restating something, we need to keep our vision broad. We need to be aware of the forces that impact us so that we can constantly be responding both to the changes in the environment for recruiting purposes, but also to the changes in the needs of the people who live in our community. And I think WJCS has a long and proud history of doing that, and we're going to continue to do that. So megatrends is important information for us.
Okay. And we will look forward to making those changes, and hopefully people will be watching this program and will be calling to say that they are going to help us to fulfill those needs. Thank you, Linda Breton, Jeff Apotheker, Robin Trotter.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience. If you have any interest in speaking with any of the participants tonight, our telephone number at WJCS is 761-0600. And we hope that if you are looking for employment in the social service area, you will give WJCS a call. Thank you and good night.